but it's strange how kind of the games were similar in a lot of respects, and that both teams played down to a lesser opponent and built an early lead and then kind of worked on giving it up, and both teams kind of got bailed out by their defense down the stretch, and I think in the end both teams, Buckeyes and Browns, both sort of stayed at least into a race. In the Browns' case, the race for a playoff berth. In the Buckeyes' case, a race for a spot in the playoff. But both of them, I think, were staying in the race by the skin of their teeth, and in races that they're sort of long shots to eventually succeed at. So I was just kind of thinking about the parallels between the two, and I think there's at least a few of them.
Let me ask you, did you really at any point, and I'm just curious because I said earlier that I did at a lot of points in Jacksonville feel in my gut the Browns were losing this game. Like there was a different feeling. Honestly, even there, people, that game was not late enough along. That drive was not crucial enough. Now, obviously, the turnover was at any point in the game. But my point is I honestly, and I seriously, like I get it that I love Cleveland as a city, and I talk about that on the air. I'm very, very proud of where I come from, but I'm realistic. I'm not trying to impress nobody watching the game on my couch. I'm like, man, at no point yesterday did I really feel like the Browns weren't going to win that game. I just felt like the offense was pitiful from the Raiders yesterday, and that the Browns were simply, like you said, playing down to the level of the team that they're in there with. I don't know. Whatever it was, I don't know. But it was different than Jacksonville. I just never felt like the Browns were going to lose that game yesterday. I just didn't think Oakland could beat them. It wasn't even the Browns. I just didn't think Oakland could win that game.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I don't think I ever got to the point. I just had a bad feeling about that Jacksonville game because, the NFL doesn't have a lot of 0-7 or 0-8 teams. When you're 0-6, you're going to win a game. The last team to go 0-16, the Lions, several years ago, and before that, it was a very long time, back to the Tampa Bay Bucks first or second year, I think. But teams just don't go winless the NFL, and John McMullen's the best guy. He points that out all the time about how it's a week-to-week thing, and they've got some excellent professional football players on every team in the NFL. But no, I didn't really feel that they had a shot. I will say that I was quite impressed with Derek Carr, I guess.
Right.
You know that I liked him before the draft. We talked about him, and I was in the Derek Carr camp. Right now, I would trade Johnny Manziel straight up for Derek Carr. After what I saw yesterday, I don't think there's any comparison in terms of who is the better pro prospect as an NFL quarterback. He was very impressive. Even more impressive after I got home last night, watched the DVR version of the game late last night. Even more impressed with how he looked as a first year rookie quarterback in the NFL. So anyway, just wanted to get that out, but. No, I was confident that because the defense was playing so well, and you mentioned it earlier, the DBs, I think, had by far their best game, really top to bottom. Gibson, Whitner, Hayden, Screen, and Gilbert even, looked like he might be an NFL cornerback at some point in time on the performance yesterday. And so that was, that was encouraging. And the other thing that was encouraging is how the balance of the NFL just keeps on showing itself. Last week I think I said to you, let's be realistic. The Browns are in that second tier of teams. They're above the terrible teams of the AFC and the NFL, and they're in that middle tier, but a step down from the Denvers. And I mentioned Indianapolis, and here you go. How in the world does that happen? How in the world does Indianapolis shut out the Bengals? Thought, 3 weeks ago, people were saying they were the best team in the NFL. And they get blanked by the Indianapolis Colts last week. They go 8 straight possessions, 3 and out to start the game. And then Indianapolis turns around 1 week, 7 days later, and gives up a record-setting performance to Ben Roethlisberger, a team that the Browns trounced 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's just as bizarre sometimes how quick it turns, and Colts blank the Bengals and then give up 51 to the Steelers. It's just beyond understanding as the weeks go by in this NFL. It's crazy.
Oh, absolutely. The Steelers scored more points yesterday against the Colts than they did in both of their games combined against the Browns. And I mean, and again, then you look at that Cincinnati. John and I were talking about that, man. That's where I go, okay, last week St. Louis beat Seattle and then came back this week and looked like they'd never seen a professional foot. And I'm exaggerating, but they got blown out of the water by the Chiefs, you know. I mean, Jamal Charles had that running attack going, and the Chiefs looked and how about Alex Smith? I think what he missed, three passes like the whole game or something like that. Like it was one of those Alex Smith performances where he's just very efficient and they've got that running game. But you know, that's the thing, man, from week to week like that. And I've seen it coming. I mean, we've talked about parity in the NFL, all of us different guys talking about this, but man, from a week to week basis, I don't know that I've ever seen it like this in the NFL, where literally the bottom teams can jump up and beat the top teams. I know the expression has always been any given Sunday, but I think that was partly true, but it was partly what the NFL hoped. But man, they've got what they wished for, because you really, really have that now more than at any other time in our sport.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, that is a follow-on from that is, you know, this whole idea that the second half of the Browns' schedule is some kind of murderer's row and we've got no shot, and if we don't get it done in the first half, how in the world are we going to compete with, say, the Bengals, you know, 2 games with the Bengals? You know, the Bengals, you know, the Browns are going to compete in those games. Are you going to say that the Browns have no shot to beat the Houston Texans, or that, you know, we might as well just forfeit at Atlanta and at Buffalo? You know, are you kidding me? You know, there are a couple tough games on this schedule, and we finish at Carolina and at Baltimore. It's never easy to win on the road, but you can't tell me that, you know, this team might as well just pack it up because the second half schedule was so brutal. It's, you know, it's going to be 8 individual weeks of NFL football, and a lot can happen to those teams that are on the schedule. A lot can happen to the team we're rooting for. So it's just it's a marathon, and interesting every week. And there's no W's you can write down, as we proved at Jacksonville.
Yeah.
It's I don't know, it's fun down at the stadium anymore, Jerry. That's the big point. That, you know, we spent years and years down at the at Cleveland Brown Stadium, where, you know, our fondest hope was for sunshine, you know, because we didn't even have any any dreams about winning the game. So now at least when they're playing at home, this team is now 3-1 and can hold serve at home the majority of the time. Should be 4-0. It's amazing though how I just thinking about it last night. You'd look at that Steeler opener, and you look at the 9 or 10 different plays that could have turned the Ravens game from a loss to a win. And you think, man, this team is a couple of plays from 6-1, but this team is also a couple of plays from 2-5.
Yep. And that's
you know, and that's just
make.
how you know, tight everything is, and the Browns have been playing tight football games. The little quirks and the little tip balls and the little, you know, single individual plays are the difference between really a 6-1 team and a 2-5 team.
Yeah, absolutely, and those are all great points to make this week. I'm telling you, you heard, you were listening to John and I'm with him. The one thing, the biggest thing that worries me about Tampa coming up is those wide receivers. I mean, any team, as we saw when you had Hayden locked up against Jimmy Graham. You know, I mean, obviously the taller receivers, that's going to be a matchup problem for the shorter cornerbacks and for the type of defensive. We don't have a bunch of tall defensive backs back there, you know, so those matchup issues are going to be tough. And those are 3 good wide receivers, good to better than good wide receivers there, depending, of course, if they all survive the trade deadline this week. But that's where I worry, is that they're definitely going to try to attack through the air. Luckily, they have a less than stellar quarterback delivering the ball, but still, I mean, it's a unique challenge that each of these teams brings, and that's going to be the one that I want to see the Browns step up to. So let's see if they really did, if Gilbert really is stepping up another level, if Hayden is starting to, you know, gear up and say, okay, I'm gonna step up my game a little bit more here, you know, and this is a good chance for that.
Yeah, you're right, and I guess if there's a glass half full perspective there, I guess it would have to be that our DBs did play their best game of the year yesterday. You've got 5 guys performing in the level. Hopefully they can maintain that and be consistent at it. Obviously, a little pass rush helps. And I said to the guy next to me before the game started, I said, "Boy, it'd be really nice if Kruger showed up today. We saw him out there warming up before the game, and he did. That was good to see. And it really all stems from the pass rush. And the team hasn't had a consistent pass rush. And really, Carr had an awful lot of time, several times when he would drop back, but. They did put it on them. The team, though, it still seems so thin in so many areas. And, in fact, if you look at all the position groups, maybe the 6 or 7 different position groups on the roster, I guess you'd have to say right now, and I came to this conclusion when I just sort of sat down and looked at D-line, O-line, running backs, wide receivers, linebackers. Defensive secondary is probably the spot that's at least the most solid and consistent right now, where you've got in those 5 guys, counting Gilbert as the third corner, at least guys you can say these guys are, for the most part, NFL caliber. Gibson and Whitner are both playing decently at safety, and Hayden had his best game, and Gilbert and Screen. So at least that's, if there's a position group on the Browns that you can say, okay, barring injury, we can be okay here, that would be it as far as my perspective.
You know what, too? Speaking of those, and I agree with you there, speaking of that depth issues and injuries, I don't have the latest. I don't know if you've heard anything on John Hughes' injury and how
have not.
serious
Somebody was
that
asking me today, and I said, don't worry, Jerry will know.
I got to tell you, I mean, we haven't heard anything from the Browns yet. I haven't gotten anything, but that looked to me like that could be a broken ankle. I mean, the way, if you look at the replay, especially you said you looked at the TV version, if you look at the replay, the way the bodies came down on top of it and the way it bent, I mean, I'm not saying it was a broken ankle, but that easily is how you break an ankle. Exactly what happened to him, and the fact that he was so ginger coming off, at the least, he has a high ankle sprain, and I'm telling you, I wouldn't be surprised if there's not a broken bone in that ankle. I mean, it was rolled up pretty nasty. I mean, the body doesn't bend the way that happened, and that happens to those guys. You hate to see that.
Yeah, and then that's obviously the last thing that this team needs is a defensive line injury. When you just getting Reuben back, and Billy, I guess, practicing this week, but did not play as far as I know yesterday.
No, but Taylor should be back in the next 2 weeks too.
It's just a terrible situation where you've just been so depleted there. But like John said, though, it's every team. You saw Chris Long go down yesterday, and guys dropping like flies around the league. So it's it's tough. It was like you said too about Hoyer. You come into the game and obviously no Gordon, and then in the first half, you're the only other offensive threat that Hoyer has, weapon-wise, that worries anybody. Defensive coordinators aren't exactly staying up nights wondering how to stop Taylor Gabriel. But, so Cameron goes down with a concussion, and I thought really it was, Hoyer making lemonade out of lemons. I mean, he used the weapons that he did have left, and kudos to Gabriel and to Hawkins and to Miles Austin, and throw Jim Dre in there too. These are not difference makers. These are not, star power kinds of players. There's very little star power on this offense, including a quarterback. And I thought Hoyer did a good job piecing together some kind of offense in that second half, and they got some field position off of 2 turnovers, but he converted them both to touchdowns in the fourth quarter using what he had. And if you look at those weapons versus the kind of weapons on offense and other teams are bringing to the party, it's hard to fault Hoyer. I actually heard people, Jerry, and you commented briefly about this at the beginning, how the fan base is down on Hoyer all of a sudden.
Oh yeah.
I as far as I know, Hoyer is not the guy that makes the running game work. He's the guy that benefits when the running game's working, but he's not blocking and carrying the football. Last time I looked, he had a quarterback rating over 100. 19 of 28 with a couple drops, you'll recall, 275 and a touchdown and no picks. And people want to complain about Brian Hoyer this morning. I don't get it.
Right. You heard me. I was saying Cleveland's the only town where we don't play the lottery for $5 million. We have to play for $250 million. Who needs that measly, small little chump change there?
That's right. And comments like, well, the division is weak. Wait a minute. It's the only division in the NFL where there's no team with even a 500 record.
Right. A weak division means that they're all.
I don't get that either.
Yeah, because somebody makes that argument.